Naturally, actors fail the auditioning process every day. I mean, that's essentially the whole point. But not everyone gets so drunk the night before that they forget their lines. Not everyone phones it in because they think their looks are all that matter. This is just a snippet of the embarrassment contained within this video. And they weren't just for any role. These were all for massive roles that could have potentially changed the careers of these actors and made them stars. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and these are 10 actors who bombed huge auditions. Number 10. Hugh Jackman, Miss Congeniality. The year 2000 was when Hugh Jackman became a star. Though initially thought by many to be miscast in the role of Wolverine in X-Men, you only have to look at the reaction to his return to the character for Deadpool and Wolverine to know how wrong those thoughts were. In between filming the movie that would change his life and its release, Hugh Jackman auditioned for a role opposite Sandra Bullock in Miss Congeniality. Now, it was ultimately Benjamin Bratt who was cast as Eric Matthews, and Jackman knows exactly why he was passed over. For starters, neither he nor his agent actually wanted him to get the job. The point of going to the audition was so that the role could be leveraged against another, namely in Someone Like You opposite Ashley Judd. This led to complacency on the part of the soon-to-be X-Man, who was surprised by having to read opposite Bullock herself. Now, he'd never had to read with another actor before, and his first time was with Sandra Bullock, with him having not read the script nearly enough. It was looked at by his agent as a formality that he would get the job, but he fell short. Well, you know the saying, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. Number 9. Tom Hiddleston, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Tom Hiddleston rose to mainstream fame as Loki in 2011's Thor, and over a decade later has created a legacy as one of the MCU's most popular actors playing one of its most popular characters. However, his big break could have come so much sooner. Back in 2003, before he had appeared in a single movie, Hiddleston had an audition to play Will Turner in Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Of course, at the time, there was no way of telling just how big the franchise would become, and even if he had nailed the audition, he may not have been able to compete with the star power of Orlando Bloom coming off the back of The Lord of the Rings. However, he may have done it differently if he could go back in time. Already planning to go out and celebrate one of his closest friends finishing their exams, Hiddleston read over what little of the script he was sent and didn't think it sounded very good. Going out drinking was a far more compelling prospect than memorizing his lines. There was no effort put into his preparation at all. Too much alcohol was consumed, and at 10 AM the next morning, he turned up hungover and with virtually no knowledge of the script. Needless to say, he did not get the job. Number 8. Jake Gyllenhaal, The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings is arguably one of the greatest film trilogies of all time. It won 17 Academy Awards over the stretch of the 3 movies, and it still holds up even after more than 20 years. Can you imagine watching it now with Jake Gyllenhaal in the role of Frodo Baggins, though? The actor went into audition, the first part of which didn't actually involve reading any lines. Instead, it was to be the moment when Frodo found the ring. Gyllenhaal, unaware of the true gravity of that particular moment, didn't really play it accordingly, and so he was off to a bad start. But things got even worse when it came to the dialogue, as nobody had bothered to tell him he was supposed to speak with an English accent. So he simply read the lines in his normal speaking voice, something that just would not have worked in Middle-earth, no matter how hard he tried. Gyllenhaal was ultimately let down by his agent, and was subsequently told by Peter Jackson that he was the worst actor he had ever seen. Ouch. That's something that's really got to sting coming from anyone. But Gyllenhaal has kindly proven that statement wrong in the decades since. Thankfully. Number 7. Chris Klein, Mamma Mia. Naturally, the skill set of certain actors can lend themselves to particular roles or genres. You've got your action heroes, your comedians, your straight actors, your romantics, and plenty more. Of course, even if actors are known for one particular style, they can still broaden their horizons, but not necessarily to everything. Musicals feel different, as there is typically a basic requirement of being able to sing at a decent level. Now, that's not something that can be easily taught, and so generally actors who can't sing tend to stay away from musicals. That makes sense, right? Well, Chris Klein, best known for playing Oz in the American Pie franchise, didn't let something as trivial as complete lack of singing ability stop him from auditioning for Mamma Mia. You know, the movie where everyone breaks into a different ABBA song every 10 minutes? The video of Klein's audition has been around on the internet for some time, and it is brutal. The actor admitted that he can't sing, but decided to take a chance anyway. ABBA pun definitely intended. Well, it didn't go well, and weirdly the movie instead cast Dominic Cooper as Sky, an actor who can actually sing. What a surprise! Number 6. Mark Strong, James Bond. In spite of his roles in the likes of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and the Kingsman franchise, Mark Strong makes a fantastic villain. See Sherlock Holmes, Kick-Ass, Stardust, Shazam, and even Green Lantern for proof. The guy just does evil so well, and it feels like he was born to play an incredible James Bond villain at some point. It's the kind of role he could elevate to legendary levels, and if you think it's a missed opportunity that it hasn't happened already, the unfortunate truth is that it could have. Though he stopped short of revealing exactly which character and for which movie, Strong has spoken about having an audition to play a Bond baddie in the 90s opposite Pierce Brosnan. After learning his lines, he went out to celebrate, and like Tom Hiddleston before his pirate audition, got way too drunk. Hungover and unable to remember any of his lines, Strong bombed his chance to join the franchise, covered in sweat in front of 8 executives. And the wonderful irony of all of this is that it was Daniel Craig, the man who would take the 007 mantle from Brosnan in the years to come, who he was drinking with that night. Number 5. Seth Rogen and Jason Seagull, 8 Mile. It's hard to imagine running lines with a friend not helping when preparing for an audition. Having that support is surely a great way to practice, and so being told to bring someone along to read opposite on the big day would surely only be a good thing, right? However, that level of comfort and familiarity could swing too far the other way, as it did with Seth Rogen when he read for the role of Cheddar Bob in 8 Mile. Yep, Seth Rogen could have starred opposite Eminem in 8 Mile had his audition not gone so badly. The friend that Rogen took with him was Jason Seagull, who also happened to be going for the same role. However, when they both got down to it, it turned out they couldn't say their lines without bursting into laughter together. You can just imagine the chaos the pair caused. Now, you may think that Rogen and Seagull couldn't have been a worse fit for the part of a Detroit rapper, and it would seem that they would agree with you. It was so bad that they didn't even finish the audition. Instead, they excused themselves and left, tears streaming down their faces. Number 4. Eddie Redmayne, The Hobbit. There is more than just one Baggins from the Shire that saw a huge name actor crash and burn while auditioning. Whereas Jake Gyllenhaal failed to impress as Frodo, a decade later, it was Eddie Redmayne vying for the role of Bilbo in The Hobbit that led to his embarrassment. Even the actor himself seemed confused when he received the call to read for the part, and decided to do something a little different to his usual routine, something he described as boring. Since this was for the younger version of a character previously brought to life, the Fantastic Beasts actor did a little homework. So in preparation, Redmayne studied Ian Holm, who brought Bilbo to life in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and decided to read his lines in that particular style. Based on his reenactment on The Graham Norton Show, it was far from a good Bilbo Baggins impression, which isn't exactly what you want from an audition to play Bilbo Baggins. He was told instead to read it in his own voice, and ultimately never received a call back. Whether using his own voice or not, it is hard to picture Newt Scamander in the role ultimately taken by Martin Freeman, so yes, this was probably for the best. Number 3. Alan Richardson, Thor. Comic book movies have come a long way since the establishment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2008. They now have their own genre, and getting cast in such a film can be a real career booster, and a window to becoming a huge star. Back in 2011, when the MCU was still in its infancy, there was no way to know just how big it would become. This, unfortunately, was to Alan Richardson's detriment, as surely if he had known, he would have made more of an effort in his audition to play Thor. The actor went into proceedings believing that no one there cared about his acting, and that he would be hired if he looked the part. Of course, that wasn't actually the case, and Richardson was told he wasn't good enough for the role. Over a decade later, Chris Hemsworth has become a megastar off the back of his portrayal of Thor, though this could have been Richardson had he taken the role more seriously. Still, he is having his own breakout as Jack Reacher these days, which may well lead him on the path to megastardom anyway, just a decade later than it could have been. Number 2. Tom Holland, Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. When The Force Awakens was set to be the first Star Wars movie in just over 10 years, naturally there were some very highly sought after roles. John Boyega beat a lot of big names to the role of Finn, one such being Tom Holland. As this came before Holland's Spider-Man debut in Captain America Civil War, he wasn't a big name at the time. But whether he was known or not, whether he was exactly what the casting team were looking for or not, you can't do what Tom Holland did in an audition and expect to get the job. In Star Wars, you're always likely to come into contact with a droid or two, and so Holland was reading his lines opposite a woman as R2-D2. Naturally, these lines were limited to bleeps and bloops, as they would have been in the movie itself. This was obviously a huge audition, but the future MCU star just couldn't keep it together and kept laughing every time she said anything. They couldn't have a Finn who was unable to get through a scene shared with R2-D2 without giggling, and so he essentially laughed himself out of the running. Number 1. Bradley Cooper, Green Lantern. DC movies have never been as good as they were when Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale teamed together to bring Batman to the screen. The Dark Knight trilogy is iconic and had a huge effect on pop culture, so much so that Bradley Cooper threw away an audition to play another DC superhero. While reading lines for the role of Green Lantern, the part that eventually went to Ryan Reynolds, Cooper apparently couldn't resist the urge to do them in his impression of Bale's Batman. Nobody asked him to do it. In fact, he was actively asked to stop and read normally. What's worse was that the actor caught a glimpse of how he looked and sounded on a monitor midway through and knew that he wasn't going to get the part. So he committed to his Batman impression even more without a care in the world. Cooper has gone on to say that Ryan Reynolds was by far the better choice for the role, and that due to issues in his personal life, it was a godsend that he didn't ultimately play Hal Jordan. I mean, not everyone is able to have such a positive outlook on flubbing such a big opportunity, so good on you, Bradley.